USCFootball.com. I'm Jack Smith alongside Chris Treviño for instant analysis from USC's Tuesday practice of Arizona week. It was a huge day of USC football practice. We've got a ton of news, so I'm not going to beat around the bush at all. Chris, why don't you give me your practice observations?
First thing, weather. Hot today. It felt like a throwback to the summer. It was very hot today. Jack's also wearing boots, so I did not get shorter. I just want to point that out, that he is wearing boots today. I can't show you them, but just trust me.
I don't know if I trust him.
A lot of things went on in practice today. I feel like the most notable thing, obviously, was that Zachariah Branch and Max Williams both came out dressed out for practice. Obviously, those two players, prominent players for USC's defense and offense, did not dress against Colorado. They traveled but did not play. Obviously Zachariah Branch was the big one that was kind of a surprise, but they both came out to practice today. Zachariah Branch was warming up, taking some punts, kick returns. That was something we did not see Wednesday. He wasn't even at practice on Wednesday. But Lincoln Riley was asked about those two. They said they're progressing nicely. They've already done more today than they did all of last week, so that's a really great sign. But he didn't give any sort of indication if they were going to play. He said they are hopeful that they're going to have them this weekend, which would be a big boost for obviously USC's return game and offense and their defense with the starter Max Williams.
What about Korey Foreman?
Obviously, Korey Foreman is a big one. He did not travel for the Colorado game. This, I believe, is the first time he's never not traveled for an away game, so that was news. He was asked, Lincoln Riley was asked, is Korey Foreman thinking about a red shirt? He said, that is something that we are exploring. And then he went into a big discussion about, this is something they talk about with kids, but for the most part, that was the headline. Korey Foreman potentially redshirting this season. Obviously, it's something that they were exploring, but he came out with a different practice jersey, not his normal 0, so we know what that kind of means in terms of, possibly being on the scout defense. So we'll have to see as that trend moves forward. Will he dress this weekend? Will he even be at the game? Because usually when they are redshirting, they are not allowed to go to the game. So that'll be a big tell if Korey Foreman is on the sidelines come this Saturday against Arizona.
Another player who had been limited, I think, in what they've done in practice, for the last couple of weeks. Raleek Brown, who switched from running back to wide receiver over the offseason. He was spotted today doing punt and kick return drills for the first time in a couple of weeks. What do you make of that?
Right, this is the first time that we've seen him do punt return and kick return drills since he made the decision to move to the scout team and potentially redshirt. As we know, like we were just talking about Korey Foreman, Raleek Brown is someone who has made the decision to pursue a redshirt. But again, the door is open. Lincoln Riley mentioned it when he was asked about Raleek Brown the first time. Like, hey, this is a changing subject. It's fluid. Possibly he comes back and he's able to contribute for the offense. I believe he only has one game played this season, so obviously he has some more games under his belt that he can play. But yeah, to see him returning punts and kicks was very, very interesting. Obviously, again, like I said, this is the first time we've seen him do that since he made the decision to go on scout. And to see him and Zach Branch back there, Caleb Blick was also there. It was a very jam-packed return unit for the start of practice.
And you can go on our Sights and Sounds video. Raleek Brown and Zachariah Branch were dancing together. They were enjoying the music, having some fun. I will say that with Zachariah Branch not playing last week, USC had Makai Lemon as the kickoff returner. Raleek Brown was thought to maybe be in that role this offseason, so it could be potential insurance in case Branch isn't able to play. That was one of the thoughts that came to my mind, is they might want to have Raleek Brown ready in that role should Branch not be able to play on Saturday. But we expected the meat of this instant analysis to be about Alex Grinch. Of course, the defense allows 41 points at Utah or at Colorado. We know we're going to get to talk to Grinch. He is a big story. What did you take from his press conference today?
I think he just pointed out some of the things. Grinch is a really good talker. He can talk for a long time on a certain question, and obviously he didn't get into super specifics, but he just got into a lot of the messages they've been sharing with the team in general. And I think one of those big ones is that they have to fight. There's a big difference from playing football and fighting in the game. I took what I took from him saying that was that the team wasn't fighting, obviously, down the stretch. That good tackle that you make in the first quarter, that's a great tackle you have to make in the fourth quarter. And those were things they weren't doing. They were letting the second half get to them, letting it slip away. You can play a great 40 minutes, but hey, this is a 60-minute game. You have to go the full time, and they were letting things slip. Maybe there's a little bit of scoreboard watching, waiting for that clock to get down so you get out of here. He said that boils down to a maturity thing. As a young player, you have to realize you have to go out there and actually play the game that's still going on. If you're up there looking at the scoreboard, you're going to look up and you're going to find that you're losing your lead and you're losing it fast. So he also had a really great quote that I really liked, in that in football, the percentage of things you do right do not matter. Everything that you do wrong, those percentages is what's going to be heightened and talked about. And obviously that's the case with USC coming off this Colorado game. We're not talking about Caleb Williams and his 6 touchdown passes. We're We're not talking about Brendan Rice having 2 touchdowns and having 7 touchdowns this season through 5 games. No, we're talking about how the defense nearly choked away that game and all the things that were going on wrong with the missed tackles and the blown coverages, the big plays allowed. Those are the things we're talking about. So it does not matter what they do right, it's what they do wrong. So he said, football is unforgiving in that way.
Bryson Shaw had some comments after the game. The safety basically said he felt like the players on defense were letting down Alex Grinch. He said, Coach Grinch is putting us in the right spot and we are letting him down. Coach Grinch was asked about the day, Alex Grinch on defense, and he basically said, Bryson's a good kid, like he's going to say that, but in the end, it comes down to coaching. You've got to coach the players through that moment, no matter what. Bryson was asked about his comments because he spoke today after practice. All he kind of said was, we're focused on the Arizona game this week. And then Mason Cobb was also asked, and he said, well, yeah, I agree. We were in the spot to make the tackle, and we just missed the tackle. So it's clear we're being put in the right spot. So the messaging was a little mixed between USC's players and coaches about Bryson Shaw's comments after the game. What do you make of it?
Obviously, that's very interesting. Bryson Shaw obviously gave that impassioned, emotional talk defending Alex Grinch. You can see that on their YouTube channel that posted up, and you can listen to the not pain, but the emotion in his voice defending Alex Grinch, a guy who's known for a long time. And I did expect Alex Grinch to follow that story. He was like, yeah, it all comes back down to coaching. You have to coach them through that, coach them through that. So I know I'm not surprised by Grinch's answer. He's always someone who will put the blame on him and the shoulders of the coaches, and that's the responsibility to coach these kids through that and get them through that, whatever hardship it may be that they're going through out on the field. But yeah, I thought it was interesting that Mason Cobb, coming off his best game of the season, was like, he's right. We were in the right position because we missed the tackle. We were positioned to make a tackle. We just didn't do it. And it's something that goes back to finishing and focusing. I think that was a really big buzzword for a lot of guys, especially Jamil Muhammad. His go-to word for everything was focus. They were losing focus. Not that they were losing focus, but everything boiled down to focus. So that tells me maybe they were losing focus in those moments. Obviously, in the second half, you're up big. You kind of check out a little bit of the game. You're just going through the motions. And again, it goes back to Grinch's quote about fighting, not just playing the game, but fighting in the game. They got to scratch, they got to claw, they got to do whatever they can to keep that momentum rolling and to close out games and not be subject to these big collapses.
Another post-game comment that was talked about in Colorado came from Lincoln Riley. He said it didn't look like the defense's problems this year to a trained eye are the same ones as last year. He was asked to elaborate a little bit more on that comment today. What did you make of what he said in regards to that?
The 2 big answers that he gave to that, I guess they were his 2 prime examples, were that the USC's defense is getting more pressure on the quarterback from all 3 levels: the defensive line, the middle linebackers with the blitzing, and then the secondary. And I think that's true. They are a better pressure team. They're getting more consistent pressure. Last year it was 2-2, below 2, and then you hope somebody got to the quarterback outside of him. But obviously it's been a more jointed effort across the board in terms of getting to the quarterback. I believe they still lead the nation in sacks, so they're doing a really good job in that regard. But again, there's still issues across the board. And another issue that he pointed out that's different from last year is that the rush lanes, they're bigger, they're stronger, they're not getting dominated at the point of attack in the trenches like they were last year. This year, they're able to battle a little bit more with other teams out there because, they went out and got Bear Alexander, they went out and got Keon Barnes. They have guys like Jack Sullivan, and there's a backup. Obviously, he didn't play a lot, but again, they beefed up their defensive line, and now they have a better chance to win in those rush line battles.
I don't think anyone would disagree that USC's got better personnel on defense this year. They look like they can have stretches that they play better than at any point last year. And Lincoln Riley said he thinks that they've had some stretches of play so far on defense this year that he didn't even think last year's team would be capable of playing. But his comments were about the fact that he doesn't think that this year's defense's problems are the same ones as last year, and that's kind of not really what he mentioned. So it feels like the defense is making similar mistakes to last year. Whether it is tackling on the perimeter, just missed tackles in general, some of those more undisciplined rush lane stuff that they did last year. So it was interesting. I think he talked about ways in which the defense has improved without talking about what he was asked about, really, which was, are the ways that this defense is struggling this year different than what they were last year, which is kind of what he said after the game.
Are you saying you did a little work around this?
I did, yeah.
I mean, classic head coaching thing. They're going to give you an answer, but it's not entirely the answer you wanted them to talk about. They're going to kind of not deflect, but they're going to say something different than what you were asked. And again, if Lincoln Riley's going to say that, that's what Lincoln Riley's going to say. We can see clearly that missed tackles, which was a big thing last year, is still a glaring issue, and they seem to be getting progressively worse. It seems like their missed tackles keep going up, and we'll see if maybe they can get back on track in a friendly home game against Arizona, which is going to be a tough opponent. You know, this is a better team, a better Wildcat team than they got when they had a fight out there in Tucson. But yeah, we'll see if they can stop the bleeding, as I like to say, with these missed tackles.
Yeah, Mason Cobb was kind of saying, we have worked on missing less tackles every single week. We've worked on tackling, trying to get better every week. But really, the fact of the matter is, statistically, USC has had more missed tackles each game as the season has gone on. So, you know, their mantra this offseason was the longer it goes, the better we get. Right now, that is not what the Trojan defense is doing. It wasn't how it went in the Colorado game. So we'll see how it goes against Arizona. There was one more thing that Lincoln Riley talked about that I thought was pretty interesting. It was what he thought the defense could get better on. He was asked kind of specifically, well, you know, what are this year's defense's problems? And he mentioned two things: that you want to obviously be a better tackling team on the perimeter, and you can't let the quarterback get outside of the pocket. And he said that especially with the quarterback they expect to play this week with Jake Delora in Arizona, who beat USC on the ground a lot last year, and some of the better quarterbacks down the schedule for the Trojans.
Right, and that's obviously one of the big issues that was going on with Colorado's talented skill players, is that USC was not making the tackle on the perimeter. And Lincoln Riley talked about how the college game has moved so much to the perimeter and getting those mismatches. So when you have the opportunity to take a guy down on the perimeter, you better do it, because otherwise it's going to go for a first down, or it's going to go for 20 yards, or it's going to go to the house. So they have to be much better at bringing those guys down, those talented skill players. And they got some talented skill players they're going to be going against this weekend in Jacob Cowing and Tatera T-Mac. I'm just going to call him T-Mac because I don't want to butcher his first name. But they've got some more skill players they're going to have to handle this weekend in the Coliseum. And then, yeah, keeping the quarterback contained. You know, I can't tell you how many times in the Clay Helton era so many people were complaining about keep a spy on the running quarterback, because running quarterbacks would kill them so much. And it seems like it is a thorn in the side of Lincoln Riley's defenses here at USC, that they've had trouble with their running quarterback. So we'll see if they can kind of change that narrative a little bit this week. But again, is it going to be Jaden Delora? We don't know, but he is coming off an ankle injury, so maybe that'll limit him a little bit in terms of him getting out of the pocket and scrambling. So it's a good little primer to see if they can change that narrative this week.
Yeah, USC has had success against some running Arizona quarterbacks in the past with Khalil Tate, you know, someone that dominated everyone, but USC bottled up for the most part in the Clay Helton era, and they'll look for the same thing, whether it is Jaden Delora, whether it is backup quarterback, whoever they get out there. And Keon Bart said, we're just going to prepare for everyone. And he's familiar with those guys, because he played with them last year, but he said, we're preparing for anyone, and we'll be ready no matter what. Is there anything that you want to mention before we wrap up this analysis today?
Not really. I mean, I think this is going to be an interesting game. I know that USC is favored by multiple scores in this one, but this is a different Arizona team. They've improved defensively. They played Washington really hard last week. They're the only team to hold them to under 40 points, and the only team to not lose to them by more than 2 scores. And they played them really well. I don't think a lot of people thought. That the Huskies were going to roll in there. Michael Penix and his Heisman trainer were going to run over the Wildcats, but they played them tough. And you only hope that USC's defense can do the same in the Coliseum, that they can play them tough, they can scratch, they can claw, they can fight, as Alex Grinch wants them to do in this game. Because this is kind of a trap game, Jack, because they have that big date with Notre Dame the following weekend. And I know you're playing at home, so maybe you think you're a little more comforting. But maybe coming off that game against Colorado, they'll be a little bit more focused going into this one. But again, I would say Arizona, kind of a dangerous team. Don't want to overlook them, because they are talented and they can win this game.
Yeah, USC has much tougher teams on the schedule down the line, but this feels like it might be the most pivotal game on USC's schedule, in the ways that if USC doesn't play super well in this game on defense, you're really starting to be concerned about that next level of the schedule, which I thought you were going to have 6 easy games to start, and then the tough part, this is supposed to be that last 6th easiest game, but if USC is able to get back on track, maybe you instill a little bit more confidence in the squad going into Notre Dame. But yes, Arizona is no slouch. Lincoln Riley mentioned one of the things they're best at is keeping the offense in front of them. Washington likes to bomb the ball over the defense. He thought Arizona was disciplined, but USC did deal with teams that drop guys back into coverage. Colorado did that. Caleb Williams picked them apart. So we'll see what USC can do. Obviously, Washington struggled a little bit on the road, and I think we'll really learn too how good USC can play at home. Whether there is that big of a difference between how the Trojans play in the Coliseum versus on the road. But anyways, that's all we've got for you guys for instant analysis today. Make sure you're checking out our YouTube page for all the different interviews today. There were a bunch of them with USC players and coaches. Sights and sounds are up if you want to see those highlights of Raleek Brown, Zachariah Branch, a bunch of the Trojan receivers at practice, including those kick and punt return drills and that awesome dance moves that Chris and I can't do quite as well. But anyways, for Chris Treviño, I'm Jack Smith. Check out USCfootball.com.